Hello, everybody. This is MartinJon, and this is the Recover Yourself workshop. Today, as we do often, are going to be going through the first hour of the Recover Yourself workshop. If it's something that you're interested in continuing further, you're going to want to join me for future workshops where you'll be able to go through the full 3-hour workshop and be able to discuss things with me and talk with me about what's coming up. And we go through exercises to help solidify all the things that we go through in the Recover Yourself, the whole Recover Yourself concept. So I recently read or I'm just finishing up, I'll finish today, the book of the Columbia professor, Corey Hart, I believe his name is. And he talked about utilizing heroin as part of his life and legalizing drugs. I'm fully behind this. As someone who has 20 years clean and sober, I still think drugs and all drugs and alcohol need to be legal, so that we can have a good conversation around what it means to be human. A lot of us will fall into the trap of demonizing others due to the fact that they are utilizing these drugs or whatever, and we have a culture that demonizes people for doing that. So we don't want to get into a place where we're judging others. We don't want our actions to be judged. And this really starts to get rid of stigma. So stigma, in my view, of course, stigma exists outside of us. We have certain ideas and laws and things that exist to build stigma. But that stigma is what happens is it comes as a message from externally, and we internalize it. And as we internalize it, we get wrapped up in the ideas, and so we live our lives in a way that is not helpful, and we propagate and continue to push those stigmas in our lives. As we engage in them, we hide. And that's one of the things that this book kind of talked about. Didn't talk about, addressed. The author had to present, how much do I want to present my to my doctor how much drug use I do. And he had to face that. And facing that, he didn't receive any backlash, but the story that scared him about facing it was experiencing backlash. So just want to kind of go through that, just because it's a great book. No, it's not a great book. It's an okay book, and it is, I mean, I have a lot of problems with it. But we don't have to go into that here. So today, if you are here as someone searching for CEUs for your profession, I will be launching some polls that you'll be able to see. If you are live on YouTube, you will not see those. So anybody that is here for CEUs will get the polls, and you'll have to engage with those polls in order to get your CEUs. That's the only way I know that you're here. That is essentially my sign-up sheet. We will be doing that throughout this first hour, and then we'll do one at the end. So I know that you're here for the bulk of the training, and then we go into the workshop stage, and then we'll do an anonymous review of how you believe I did. Like, we will get your opinion about the workshop in general. So we're going to start with the fact that we all face burnout. I don't care what your job is. I don't care who you are. We face burnout. We burn out in tech world, burnout in policing, burnout in lawyering, burnout in counselors that deal with people with drug and alcohol addiction. Everybody that we face is going to be carrying some different stuff. And if we have to face them, if we face them with the idea that they are just a mass of people, or that everybody's the same, or that we understand what's happening, or if we have to address them while we're triggered, that's going to affect how we see them and how frustrating that could be. If we, heaven forbid, lose a parent and then have to go into work and hear someone talking poorly about their parents, we may very well get triggered. We may feel like the right thing to do is to make sure that they resolve everything with their parents, but that might not be the right thing to do for them. And so this is why it's important to understand how our triggers play out in the grand scheme of what we're trying to do. And so because we all face burnout, because we all get triggered, this workshop is going to go through a lot of these sorts of ideas so you can find those and add awareness to them. Pardon me. I am moving forward a little too quick on my slideshow. So what we're going to do is, this is the Recover Yourself workshop, and the whole idea is to recover yourself, your whole self. As soon as we're born, we are starting to live lives dictated by others. Now, you're a person right now, probably if you're a professional, that is dictating how other people should live. You are, like, some people may be coming to you because they were sent to you via courts. If they were sent to you via courtrooms, well, you're in control of how the court is going to see them. Now, that's a lot of power to have. But what we want is those people that we work with to be able to recover themselves. So we don't want to get entangled with their freedom. We don't want to get entangled with their stories. We want to make sure that we're staying neutral and that we're in a place where we're giving them the best advice that we can and giving them the best guidance that we can. And so that's why we want to make sure that we are in a space of recovering ourselves. Because when we're in a space of recovering ourselves, we are more likely to give them good guidance. Because when we're triggered, we're not able to give them guidance. We're going to go through some of that today. We're going to go through a number of different things. So we're going to start with the fact that no matter where we are, who we are, we want to distract ourselves a little bit from something or another. Even Drug Use for Grownups, the book that I just finished, like, his use of heroin is primarily escapist. Now he's going to say it's for his his right to feel good, or his right for happiness and other things like that. And I say, well, why do you live a life in which that is considered happiness? I don't know, but and these are some of the issues that I had with the book, but not that I have issue with the concept of what he's talking about. Of course, he's perfectly well within his right to add that to the list, and as long as he knows why and he can have a conversation about that, that's great. But I argue that in doing that, what we do is practice awareness avoidance. There's nothing wrong with this. We do this all the time. Some of us do it within our jobs. Some of us do it within our lives. Some of us do it all the time. The problem with wanting to practice awareness avoidance is that we are inadvertently asking for something external, like heroin or alcohol or our job or reading or exercising or gossiping, to fill our lives with the exact thing that awareness brings. And what is that? Calm, trust, security, abundance, confidence, safety, a whole list of things. Like, this is just the tip of the iceberg as to what those things can help us feel, right? Like, if we take heroin, it might just to feel calm and not stressed over the things that we have to do. We may actually feel safe when we take methamphetamine. We can feel confident when we take uppers. We can feel abundant when we take LSD. We can definitely feel trust when we take MDMA or Molly. So, but those things are not just drug related, right? Because we can feel trust for someone when we are in a transactional relationship with them, and that is clearly defined. We can feel abundant when we have a lot of money coming in. We're able to spend money on things. When we feel lack, it's oftentimes we'll go and we'll do something just to buck that idea, and we'll purchase something, which may send some of us into a downward spiral. Not all of us are going to be able to have, you know, responsible drug habits, um, but like some very privileged people can. So it's important to understand that, like, we as individuals may try and build our confidence by getting a certificate, by starting some, like some new adventure or whatever, in terms of financial abundance or whatever. Safety. When we don't feel safe, we often lock the doors, turn on the alarms, and do all of these things so that we can feel safe. Now, that is often practicing awareness avoidance, especially when we start using other things to help us do that. We have to feel those things within us. We have to understand why those things are coming up and try as best we can to understand where they're coming from. So my name is MartinJon. I'm going to be with you for the next couple hours. If you're on YouTube, we will be together for another 45 minutes or so, and I welcome you. Thank you so much for joining me. To recover from is the most important part of the recovery process. There's nothing more important than recovering from, especially when we have a heavy addiction or an addiction that's taking us away from our lives. The reason for this is because the thing that we are addicted to, the thing that we are utilizing to escape, is in part in control of our brain. It's in control of how we're seeing the world. It's in control of how we're maneuvering, especially when we have an addiction. Because when we have an addiction, like with alcohol, the alcohol tells us we need more alcohol. So when we start to feel uncomfortable, we start to go through detox, we start to experience the desire for alcohol, and the voice in our head starts to speak for alcohol. It's not speaking for us. It's not speaking for what we want as growing, expanding individuals. It's speaking for itself. This is why recovering from, and what I mean by that is getting some time and distance away from your drug of choice. Now, even though to focus on what we're recovering from, even though that's the case, focusing on recovering from only associates our recovery with things we're trying to separate from. So if I say I'm recovering from alcohol abuse, all right, well, before I was recovering from, my entire life was defined by alcohol abuse. Now, and I'm recovering from, my entire life once again will be defined by alcohol, only the opposite of what it was defined prior, meaning that I will no longer be a victim of alcohol. I am going to be the conqueror of alcohol, which, once you start putting it in that sense, you can probably already start to see the problems and the inherent similarities between being a conqueror and a victim, right? Like, it's just setting yourself up for failure. When I talk about recovering from, I often think about it as you pick a spot, you put your pick in the ground, and you grab a rope that's attached to that pick, and you back up and you back up, and you say, okay, I got 5 days, I got a month, I got 90 days, I got a year. And then, but you're always identifying where you are now as it relates to where you were when you started recovering from. This is a huge problem for many people, because as they start to distance themselves from that which they are trying to recover from, they're still defining their life from this place of recovery, from this place of I'm looking over my shoulder at that thing which I'm getting further and further away from. So that is not necessarily going to be a recipe for success. The idea that like I'm looking over my shoulder at that which I'm leaving behind and it's getting further and further and further into the distance. Eventually, I won't be able to see it anymore, which means, and we've done so many studies on the idea that memories are faulty, that we can come up with the idea that many people who have maybe a year, maybe 2 years or 3, can easily backslide because they're defining something that they can no longer see clearly. Now, long-term recovery is born out of the understanding of what we're recovering to. This is my concept and something that I've worked a lot with. And as someone with 20 years clean and sober, I know that recovering to is the message that we want to bring to people over time so that they have something to pick up. Recovering from is taking things and putting them down. Recovering to is picking things up. We have to understand this. And you guys have experienced this. I'm sure you see people all the time with saying, I'm not willing to do this for my recovery. I'm not willing to do this for my recovery. And you have to ask, well, what are you willing to do? What are you willing to pick up? What are you willing to achieve for your sobriety, for your recovery, for you to live a bigger and better, more honest life? To recover yourself is work we do to strengthen and expand our lives. It's not what we're doing. And we are not recovering to in order to knock up some time. And we're not recovering to in order to tell people how great we are. We are living this life. And so we want to recover ourselves completely so that we have a place to be able to move this. And this is when you're dealing with people that are in early recovery. I want you guys to understand that a large part of early recovery is planting seeds that they can reap further down the line. If you plant seeds now, they'll be able to reap the rewards for that. And planting those seeds is understanding how to talk to somebody about recovering to without them onboarding it completely. They can't. They need to focus on recovering from. Recovering ourselves and planting seeds for recovering ourselves launches lives that are self-guided, ceasing the incessant search for answers outside of ourselves. Even as counselors, many of us look to the DSM-5 to define things for us. We can't do that anymore, right? Like when we want to be self-guided, when we want to understand our lives and how we are going to interact with others, we have to understand that we have to make those rules. The rules in DSM-5 is a nice guideline and it's a nice place to start, but you know that now. You can put that down and you need to pick yourself up and you need to be your own counselor. You need to be your own therapist. You need to understand that what you have to offer is something different than what everybody else is offering. Why? Because you have recovered yourself. And that's what we're going to be dealing with today. We want to get you to a place where you make the tiniest shift, right? A lot of times, we get into workshops, we want to make a big shift. We want to walk on fire and we got to do all these like wonderful things and leave dancing and singing. I don't want that for you. What I want for you today is I want you to make the tiniest shift. The tiniest shift is sustainable over time. And over time, in 2 weeks, you are going to be so far from who you are today because we made a tiny shift today. And that's how I want us to all think about our clients and the people that we interact with. If we're always looking to see and grade, then we're just judging those moments. We're not actually allowing people to make a tiny shift. We're trying to get them to make a big shift, which is not sustainable. So what we want to do today is make a tiny shift. So opening your mind a little bit to the idea of recovering to. Just mentioning recovering to can start sparking new ideas in your mind because it's a new way of looking at recovery. We've always said, what are we recovering from? And that is a difficult concept because recovering from utilizes the word recovery in a non-transient way, right? The transient verb To use recovery as a transient verb, which means something changes, we have to use it in the space of recovering to. What are we going towards? This way we look forward, we no longer look back. I, with 20 years, hardly ever look back at how far I've come. And that is true recovery. Not going back to my story, not talking about how I got here, but talking about where I'm going is much more fruitful for both myself and the people that I work with. And that is how I want you guys to be able to look at it too. Many of us as counselors have come from a sordid past, and we want to make sure that we're going to, one, recover from all that, but we also have a place to go. We have a way to move forward into our own lives and who we are. So today there is a desire to connect more than ever with us and others, right? Like we can see memes and pop culture and all sorts of things that are trying to get us to be more open. We as counselors need to be able to understand and utilize that to the best of our ability. So if 20 years ago you'd walk into a room and say the energy in this room is very clean, well, everybody would have looked at you like you were crazy. You do that today and people are like, yeah, it is nice. Even masculine men, even like construction workers can understand the conversations around energy and stuff. Why? Because it's in our pop culture, because it's around us all the time in memes. Yeah, there is still some work to be done in terms of poking fun at new age and other things like that, but we are moving in a good direction. That desire forces adding this conversation of recovering to. So it is a natural conversation that we can have with our clients because they've already been inundated with ideas about energy, with ideas about healing, with ideas about meditation. They're already primed. And so that's great. You're already primed for this conversation. When we speak of recovering from, we are defining life as living without stuff, right? We're defining life as living, like putting things down. But once we start talking about recovering too, we immediately start living life defined as what's living within, as living within, as living within. Repetition work. So as we work with our clients, we have to understand, well, once we can start kind of bringing this conversation, well, where are you recovering to? What are you recovering towards? That then is a big shift in how our clients can start to just tweak their interest, just pique their interest in like, oh, I have value. Because that's what we all need to get our counselors to understand. That's what we all need to understand as well. We have value. Due to the nature of our consumer culture, many things attempt to give us this sense of depth while only offering escape. There are too many places in the world right now where people are attacking our weaknesses. And it's everywhere online, Amazon, Google, Facebook, YouTube, all of these places, they are gearing people to, one, they're gathering data about people so they know where we have doubts about ourselves, and then they present us with ads and questions and comments and videos and all of these things that continue to help us doubt ourselves. These are addictive things, right? When we get into a cycle of feeling weak, we can search for answers outside of ourselves. And this is going to be a little video clip I'm going to share. I wonder, I'm sharing my screen. I need to make sure that the audio is being shared as well. Share sound. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to play this video. Listen to it. This is Ruby Warrington of The Numinous. She wrote the book Sober Curious, and this is her take on this idea of clarity and living with clarity.
it's not so much that I'm pro abstinence, I'm pro clarity. Whatever it takes to have real, true clarity of thought and mind and intention, that's what I am pro, because I think there are so many things in our world today that are set up and designed to steal our attention and to shape our opinions and to shape who we think we are. And we have to be super vigilant in this society that we live in now to retain clarity. And I think that any substance, any behavior that kind of clouds our connection to ourselves ultimately gets in the way of clarity.
I couldn't have said it any better. Ruby is right on point with this. So many things in our society are trying to take us away from that. So moving forward, although we have talked about like our clients, our drugs, the alcohol, those big sort of topics, I want to move us into us, because we need to understand recovering too just as much, because recovering too doesn't have to do with drugs, alcohol, and everything. It has to do with television, social media, emotional loops, shopping, gaming, eating, caffeine, cluttering, cleaning, sex, relationships, multitasking, and of course, yes, drugs and alcohol. So these are what I consider pacifiers. And the book I just read, Drug Use for Grown-Ups, drugs are definitely a pacifier. It's not something that he is addicted to, according to him, and that is who we look to say, are you addicted? So he's utilizing it as a pacifier. The biggest question is, why do we need a pacifier? What is the pacifier used for, and what are we trying to pacify ourselves from? And it's not about stopping doing the thing. It's about being curious as to why the thing exists in our life. If we understand that we are doing this because it makes us happy, well, what is making us unhappy? That this is the antithesis of it, right? I often ask people, how many of you chose to drink coffee this morning? And then I'll ask you, did you actually choose to drink coffee today? Meaning you went to bed last night not knowing if you were going to drink coffee. Or did you actually just execute a decision that you made a long, long time ago and are just continuing to make that choice that you made years and years ago? Because if that's the case, then there is a place in your life where you are not asking yourself, who am I? Who am I today? You may have ceased to become a coffee drinker 10 years ago, but because you never asked that question, because that question has never been brought up, you've allowed caffeine to stay in your life, even though you're not, engaged with it as someone who needs it right now. And you're not even questioning, do you need it? You're just saying, this is what I have. So give me 1 second. For the caffeine thing, it's really important for us to understand that we may be making choices at a certain point in our life. We may have made that choice when we were 16. Here we are. I mean, I'm 45. If I continue drinking coffee my whole life, how much am I doing something that has nothing to do with who I am today? The same thing that happened with sugar. Emotional loops are a big one. I want you guys to really think about these individual things. Like, many of us go to work and it is just a foregone conclusion that we're going to be going to work, even if it's not fulfilling us, even if it's not making us happy, if it's not contributing to our life at all. And as counselors and clinicians, you guys are doing good work, but how many of you have decided a long time ago, let's say you're a counselor who's coming out of recovery. You go through your 12 steps and you're like, I'm going to be a counselor. I'm going to help people. I'm going to be a social worker. I'm going to help people get out of this. Well, you go ahead and you do that, but you never question, is it just felt right at that moment because it was an answer. It was an answer that solidified. It was just like, okay, I just want the right answer. I don't want to do the work of struggling to figure out who I am. This will just do it for me. And as we kind of continue down this path of like just getting answers, going to Google, going like looking around and being coerced into doing things. I mean, we look at schools like universities, and a lot of universities just make their students adjunct professors. Some of their students, not all of them, of course. Why? Because they're cheaper, right? And those students feel like they want to give back, or those students feel like they want to contribute to education and other things like that. And so they get involved in those things. How many of those people are happy? It's hard to say. How many of those people is that their actual life, or are they just looking for an answer? Pacifiers are an answer to me feeling uncomfortable, right? Me feeling unworthy, me feeling trust issues, me feeling all sorts of things. And all of these are pacifiers that we can utilize. And a pacifier could be heroin. A pacifier could be alcohol. A pacifier could be exercise, right? Like we want to make sure that we are keeping tabs on those things that help pacify us, and then understand what we're trying to pacify ourselves from. So just like the caffeine work that we talked about earlier, every day, of course, we have to step away from one thing or another. And although it's normal to do this, are we taking note of the things that we want to step away from? Because once we understand what it is we want to step away from, we can face it, and we don't have to falter to, we don't have to fold to the pressure of a pacifier, right? Porn is a pacifier, and during the epidemic, we've seen numbers skyrocket with with porn use. And not only that, we're seeing more and more people doing porn, which means there is a larger and larger market, which means more and more people are gaining financial support through the industry. That means it is going to continue to gain attention and appreciation, and that is a pacifier. That's something people are trying to, like, they're escaping something at their home because the pandemic has forced people to be home, and the stress of the pandemic that it's causing, and maybe money problems and other things like that. So industries are going to grow, and those industries are going to utilize the information that they gather to continue to draw us down the road of addiction. This is what Amazon has done. This is what Facebook's done. This is what YouTube has done, or Google, and all of these companies. What they're trying to do is get us to engage, get us to pacify, and then get us to pacify a little more, a little more, a little more. When they know when we pacify, when they know where our weaknesses are, they're just going to keep feeding it to us. They're going to keep feeding us our pacifiers. And as they do that, we will become more and more, I don't want to use the word addicted, but we are going to become more and more reliant on those pacifiers. And we are not in control of how those pacifiers necessarily get administered. So we as counselors do need to keep a level head, and we need to be able to institute this in our lives so that we can help others do that as well. So awareness, as I mentioned earlier, big point, is one of the biggest points that I have to make, is noticing where we want to check out or where we're not choosing to engage is going to be one of the core ideas that help us recover ourselves. When we can see where we want to check out, we will be able to just add awareness to that. And even if we wait 10 minutes before we engage in our pacifier, we wait 10 minutes. That's 10 minutes of quiet that we didn't have before, that we'll be able to sort and become more aware of that which we are trying to escape. So there's this gap, right, between our subconscious mind, which holds all of the fear and all of the stuff within us that that we're trying to escape, and our conscious mind, which knows which knows our pros and follows along. So there's a gap between how we consciously want to respond to something, how we would um, under the most favorable circumstances, what would we endorse? Like this is our conscious mind, versus our subconscious, which is going to coax us into responding differently. So our subconscious mind, and this is when we start talking about the different modes of the brain and different ways the brain works. The brain has a couple different networks that it works on. There are dozens that we have mapped. One is the salient mode, right? The salient network, and one is the default mode network. Default mode network, you're in that right now. You're not upset about anything. You can see like someone, you can pay attention to me, and there's someone across the room drinking a coffee. You can see that, your cat, where they are, or your dog is outside and barking, and you're under, like, so you can put your attention on a bunch of different things, but still control where the majority of your attention is, right? This is the default mode network. And you're in that right now, learning and what have you. And there's other networks online as well. But if I were to trigger you, immediately you would put blinders on. And you all know that feeling. When someone cuts you off, all of a sudden your driving turns into a blindered activity in which you are frustrated at the person who cut you off. If you're having a great day and your boss or your coworker says something flippantly that just triggers fear about the state of your job or the security of your job, those blinders go on, and all of a sudden we are left wanting, right? We can't pay attention to anything. Like, we're in a conversation, we hear something, we put our blinders on. Now we're not even paying attention to this conversation or where we're going, and we get lost in our thoughts, in our blindered thoughts about ourselves. And that is your subconscious taking over and creating a lot of this fear or anxiety or other things like that. And what we want to do is we want to close that gap. We want to close the gap and become more aware of what is happening in our lives. Pardon me. Turn off the audio on that. We want to be able to become more aware of how of being in blinders, because once we can close the gap between, because those are two totally different experiences, right? We got those blinders on and we can't focus on anything, and yet we're trying to maintain focus. We're trying to maintain what we've been doing. We often don't take that step and say, you know what? I've just been triggered. I need a moment to regather myself. If we were able to do that, that is recovering yourself. That is, I was just triggered. Let me take a moment to figure out what that is, because that's not you, right? That's not what they said. That's me and my fear of losing my job and what that can entail. And then that, and what my wife is going to say, or what my husband is going to say, what all of these things, what are the ramifications of what I just heard and what's going to happen. If there's anything in the world that we don't like, there's something about us that we don't like. If we hear something or we experience something, we see something, whatever, if that exists, that's about us bringing it back home. There is something happening subconsciously that is saying, you're afraid of this and you need to look at it. So this is the biggest part of all of this. If we can really embrace, I don't like that. I don't like Trump. Why don't you like Trump? Okay, give me the list of things that you don't like Trump about. If you were to do that, I will show you fears that you have about yourself. That is how the world works, right? We've all heard in this energetic kind of tone and this that, we manifest things and all of that. It's true. But a lot of that is happening on the subconscious level. And so when we can attach ourselves, when we can attract our attention, move it towards our subconscious, we'll be able to break apart some of that work. We'll be able to see it for what it is, and that's a reflection of us. And so that's an important aspect, right? I don't like the fact that I'm poor. Why am I poor? Well, let me look at the things that I believe about poor people. Guess who I just found? Myself, right? And then in order for that to change, I have to challenge and face those fears that I have. And that's the work of living, right? That's the work of expanding and living our lives wholly and fully. So, because so much of this work revolves around professionals, I do want to once again state this conversation of that which you don't like in your life is about things you don't like about yourself. That is an advanced conversation that we have to have. And this is where I have it with professionals. I do not have this conversation with people that are trying to quit drinking or drugs or gambling or anything like that. First thing they have to do is recover from. So in Maslow's hierarchy of needs, we want to make sure that we're at least steadily in the love and belonging space. If we're looking for a home, if we're looking for food and water, and we're going to get some sleep, these conversations aren't going to be helpful for you there. There, you have to deal with real problems. Once you get into love and belonging, problems start to fall away, and we start creating them because we're coming from a place of stress. We don't want to continue creating problems, and so we want to start planting ideas of what is it like moving forward. What are we recovering to? We are heavily influenced by external forces when we're trying to deal with the physical stuff. So don't even try to have a conversation like this. We can always kind of plant little seeds with people about like, hey, won't it be great when that's done? Right? What are we moving forward? But we don't want them to say, oh, look, you have a food problem. Like, what does that say about yourself? No. When we're in love and belonging, all of us in safety, all of a sudden we can have family problems that are created in our minds. We can have relationship problems that are created because we interpreted things differently. There's no wrong way. There's no way to interpret not having enough food. There's no way to interpret not having a place to sleep or not having clean water. There's no way of interpreting that. Those things are real, external sort of things, and you have to deal with those first. Once those are dealt with, everything else is a thought. And because everything else is a thought, it's coming from us. It's coming from our own fears. It's coming from our own past. So when we are going to be starting to talk about getting triggered, anybody that's here for the full workshop for the CEUs will go through, and we will start talking about some writing assignments and some other things that we're going to be going through for the workshop. Other than that, I want to leave everybody that is on the YouTube live, I want to leave you with check out and become aware of your triggers. What is triggering you? What is causing you to turn toward your pacifier? What is causing you to pick up a pacifier? When do you need those things? And do you need them on the regular, like your coffee, where you don't question it at all? Or do you need it during certain times of your life and after certain events? So where are you making choices or not making choices, right? Like the difference between where are you making a choice to, binge watch Netflix, and is that just because a show came on, or is it something that you do regularly, or is it something that you do after a hard week at work? Where are you not making choices? Pardon me. Where are you not making choices? Not making choices like not making the choice to drink coffee, but you're drinking it every day, right? But you're just not making the choice. When do you hide? When do you hide what you do from someone? I just finished, or I'm about to finish, drug use for grown-ups, and he was hiding his heroin use from his doctors, hiding his heroin use from the people around him. Why? Because it's not acceptable in his mind to be that way, right? Because nobody else is. But he put out a book doing it, so obviously it's fine that he's able to do that. So he's no longer hiding, but he was hiding for 20 years. If he was able to deal with this earlier, we'd be a lot further along in this conversation, of course. Who or what gets us angry? Sometimes it's certain people, sometimes certain things. I remember a time in my life where it was someone cut me off. I got cut off almost every day. And since I dealt with that, I haven't been cut off in over 15 years. So this can change your life, because when you're getting cut off is a way of defining and prescribing what's happening around you. Once you start to define things differently, it changes. So that is a big aspect and a big ask for what we're going to be trying to accomplish today. Why do those things upset you? Is there a story behind it? In the full workshop, we talk about this. What happens when you're taken out of your structured day? How do you respond to that? What are the stories you tell yourself? Why is it frustrating, if it's frustrating at all? How do we respond when we or others don't meet our expectations? And what are the stories that we tell ourselves around those things? These are real important aspects. This is going to be the end of our initial workshop, and the hands-on portion of the workshop will continue forward. So if you're interested in taking a full workshop, please keep going to MartinJon.com. I will be creating new workshops for probably after Easter. I'll have a whole new batch of workshops that you guys will be able to join and attend, and we'll be able to go through the full workshop at that point. Thank you so much. I appreciate your time. Once again, I'm MartinJon, and until next time, keep recovering yourself. That is the most and best thing that we can do in our lives to expand the world and expand the people and our clients and the lives of those around us. Because living by example is much better than living by force or trying to tell somebody what the answer is, because we don't know what their answer is. And so understanding that, like, our answers are unique and we're not going to find them outside of ourselves either, is a big, big aspect to everything that is Recover Yourself. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day.